Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Kinesio Outdoors podcast, where my goal is to educate you on how to safely enjoy exercise indoors and outdoors, inspire you to experience life outside, and encourage you to live a more active life closer to nature. Today on the podcast, I have Sam McGuire. Thanks, Sam, for taking time out of your day to join me. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing just fine. I kind of miss the California weather. So you're Paso Robles, is that right?
Yep. Central California, Paso Robles area, northern San Luis Obispo, southern Monterey County type
Yep.
deal.
Yeah, my wife's family is from Salinas, so I know the area moderately well. And
Perfect.
I'm missing the sunshine because it's pretty muggy outside right now, so that's a bummer,
Where,
but oh
where
well.
are you?
I'm from Shaver Lake originally. It's the Sierra Nevadas east of Fresno. And right now I'm in Corvallis, Oregon. I'm going to Oregon State.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
Yeah, I'm a PhD student, so I think I know everything about one little topic. That's kind of the running joke with PhDs. So, everybody, Sam is from McGuire Ballistics as well as SMC Guide Service. We're going to talk about the McGuire Ballistics first, and then we'll kind of dive into that guide service in a bit. So, Sam, why don't you give us kind of a rundown who you are, hobbies, interests, kind of how you got where you are now, and then we'll dive into the McGuire Ballistics side of things.
Yep. My name's Sam McGuire. I've been a licensed guide in the state of California for the last 21 years, as well as in aerospace engineering, production, and manufacturing. So my family owns McGuire Grinding, and before that, it was uh, Mid-State Precision. And so we've been in high precision components and parts for the last 50 years or so, or very close to. And we are based out of the Paso Robles area in California. Um, Grew up hunting and fishing. That was like, I guess, our church on the weekends was my dad would take us. And so kind of like, yeah, Central Coast California boy, grew up packing horses into the high country of the Sierras and the back country in the A zone. And roughly around, I guess, 2004, I started helping out in guide camps for a good buddy of mine, Brady Daniels of CalQuest Outfitters. And that kind of set me on my journey for the rest of my life or up until this point.
That's pretty cool. So I have to ask, where in the Sierra Nevadas? You said the A zone, where about? Because I'll just say I hunted D7. That's where I lived. That's where I hunted. I'm not the best hunting. Don't give me your spot, but were you
You're
in that area or were you further north?
tell everybody I caveat everything I talk about with the hunting is I will if I'm telling you where I'm going, I'm probably not telling you the truth. So I'm honest, but I up front I tell guys that so when I start talking, I might be talking about D6 or D7 or D8 or D13 or
That's
I've hunted a lot of units in California. We bounced around quite a bit. So I will say we've hunted D7, D7, D6, D13, D11, A zone. I guess the northern stuff I haven't messed around with. The X zone stuff we've messed around with a bit. Just we've been doing it for a long time. I've been packing horses and livestock back into the wilderness, and I mean since I was I don't know 8 years old or 10 years old or something like that. So that's kind of like our main thing. That's our main way of hunting, if we can, is to pack back in. Um, I mean, some of these are, we've done trips into the Sierras. It's like 22 miles to base camp. So, and it just depends, but depends on where you're hunting. You don't necessarily have to go that far. You don't necessarily have to go that far because a lot of people go past a lot of good stuff. But yeah, I would say kind of the central Sierra stuff is where I grew up hunting, all the way to the coast side. A lot of A zone stuff, all the way to, the Los Padres National Forest and all that.
Mhm. Yeah, and with those A zones, the seasons are quite a bit earlier than the D zones, right? Like a month and a half, something like that.
When the archery opens in July, some of the hottest hunting. I'll be scouting elk and stuff like that in July during the A zone, and it'll get 120 degrees, and it's
Yeah,
pretty unbelievable.
I don't miss that about hunting in that area. That's something I don't miss. I got a bear September 1st, I think, a few years ago. 5,000 feet elevation. It was 92 degrees when I got that bear. I don't miss that anymore. We got that bear out of there quick. We just packed it out whole. I just carried it on my back. It wasn't that big.
Oh,
Because
oh.
we didn't want to lose it.
Yeah,
So
it's a different. I've actually started to learn to enjoy it in some weird way, but yeah, I like all the seasons, man. I've started to enjoy some of the real hot stuff for what it is, you know.
yeah, yeah, that's fair. Plus it could be worse, right? You could be stuck inside. So there's
Very
that.
sure.
So you mentioned hunting. Is it mostly big game? Do you know any small game, any fishing?
So my brother is a commercial fisherman.
Okay.
So he spent a lot of time on all. We've spent a lot of time rock cod fishing, trout fishing. I nowadays have very little time for it, but I love it. I absolutely love the fishing stuff. The small game stuff is fun when I have time. I'm very busy. My schedule is like it's basically running McGuire Ballistics during the week, and then the weekends I'm running SMC Williams guide service on the weekends, or guiding, or running all over the state doing stuff. So I love the small game. I got to shoot a couple ducks a few weeks ago, which I haven't done in years, and I absolutely think I got more jacked up over that than I do um, like spot and stock pig hunting and stuff like that. It was just so I do love it. I wish I had a little more time. I think most people need to not overlook it and start with small game and work themselves up. You get a lot of 12-year-old kids, the first animal they get to shoot at's an elk or something, and I think it kind of misses the forest for the trees when you do that. I've seen kids just it's like if this is the top end of what we're doing, I don't know. The buildup seems to really help with the kids to just entrench them in it for the rest of their lives, in my opinion.
So anyways, as you were saying, starting with small game, you think really helps people or kids just kind of
I
get
think
a taste of
it
it.
it builds a foundation that they
Oh
need.
yeah.
A lot like you see kids getting put down, and I'm guilty of it. Like I guided kids on monster buck tule bulls, and that's the first animal they've ever shot. And they're laying down on a big high powered rifle, 550 yards, sending it and just leveling stuff. And it's hard to, I don't know. It's just good to build, I think, a whole foundation from the ground up. And not to say you have to or whatever, but my kids are definitely going to be doing shooting squirrels and rabbits and all that.
Oh yeah.
So I guess the short answer is I love small game when I have the time. It's funny. Like the couple times I do get to go shoot quail and stuff the last couple of years has been like it makes me realize how much I miss it and love it. So it's not something I get to do much, but I do love it and I do appreciate it.
Yeah, and there's something to be said about so people rag on California for a lot of reasons, but California has really great small game opportunities, right? So that is something that I definitely miss. Being here on the Western Oregon side of things, there just isn't as much opportunity for that small game. And I do like how you mentioned, like, again, that kind of starting with that small game. So I want to dive into that really quick. I wasn't expecting this, but to me, some of the benefits of small game are there are oftentimes more opportunities, right? More trigger time. And then there's kind of the less pressure of it's a smaller animal. Oftentimes they start with a shotgun. So if their shot isn't perfectly precise, they still can be successful. And with that, like you can be a little bit louder. I just feel like that's a more welcoming, kind of less stressful environment to bring kids in. I started with quail and squirrels, like you just said. And by the time I got to hunting deer, I didn't struggle finding a deer in my scope because I practiced with squirrels and quail and stuff like that, right? So,
Really important. Yep.
yeah. Well, cool. I didn't expect you to go down that one, but I really am glad that you said that. A lot of people that listen to this have never hunted or are new hunters, and I think small game is overlooked as something that is a really
You can go
fun
out.
way to get into it.
You can go out to I go hiking in national forest every once a week, and there's rabbits and quail and dove and all that. And I never see anybody out there, so it's wide open, and there's a lot of opportunity for guys that are willing just to work just a little bit. Even on the big game side, like California is incredible. We got more species of deer, elk. We got more species of big game than anywhere else. Like we've got
Yeah.
the three species of elk. The deer stuff's incredibly complex because
Oh, yeah.
there's, yeah, I mean, you got blacktails and hybrids and mule deers and, multiple types of mule deer and all that. And just, it's, eastern eastern migratory herds of mule deer and then western migratory with lowland deer and all that stuff. And it's just like it's incredibly diverse. And there's a lot of opportunity out there for guys, not just, even for the big stuff, but the small game stuff. Yeah, it's start with quail and squirrels and smaller, aim small, miss small. If you got small stuff to start with, you learn how to shoot the big stuff. Shooting the big stuff later is a lot easier. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, again, thanks for explaining that. It's nice to have somebody who's immersed in that explaining it. I experienced very little of it. My dad took me small game hunting to prepare me for big game hunting, not because he likes small game hunting. So it's cool to have you explain that. Thanks for that. So now I want to switch gears and talk about McGuire Ballistics. So I'll kind of explain my experience, and then you feel free to just interrupt me, cut me off anywhere that I'm kind of making some errors. So 2012, is that when the mandate was changed?
two, don't
Me-
quote me all on this. I'm just going to go off the top of my head, but our area was the core area of the lead ban, and that was 2008. And
Okay.
then
I think we were after you.
yeah, the rest of the state followed. I believe, let's say 2017, 18 ish, somewhere in there, the rest of the state followed, but we were the core condor area. So right in the center of that, 2008 was, I believe, when the lead ban went up. So
Yeah, so just some background for those of you that don't know. The California condor was, I guess, classified as an endangered species. And the California condor, what it is it's a very large bird, kind of similar to a turkey vulture. It eats dead animals. That's what they do. Now, the issue that was happening is that the California condors were eating non-collected animals that were shot with lead ammunition, and they were getting lead poisoning and dying off. Is that tracking so far?
there's a lot of weird stuff around all that I'll just stay away from. I
Okay,
will that
but
I'm
that's the
not.
basis.
Yeah, and I'll say I'm not coming at this from a place of an environmental side. You
Yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean? It's not where I'm coming from on the with the non-lead bullets.
yeah.
But basically, yeah, there was
That's
a it was pretty political at the time, and I'll stay away from that because, like I said, I'll state I'm not a huge fan of the lead ban, um, and I don't. It's not something like I supported. A lot of people I know and at the time that were kind of embedded in the process weren't supportive of it either.
yep.
There's a lot of loose ends on it everywhere, and you're not really sure what's what. I'm not the highest educated guy and all that stuff, but all I can do is speak for me and my company and all that. We didn't come at this from an environmental standpoint of uh, at all. So
Yeah.
as far as the lead ban goes, you know, I just I don't think it was handled properly and responsibly. So, and that's about where I'll leave that.
Yeah, yeah, and we don't need to dive too far, but kind of my summary is what we were told as people who had to get rid of our lead ammunition, right? We were told California condors are eating um, these animals that were shot with lead and were not recovered by hunters, so on and so forth. That's what we were told. So, okay, that's the way it was voted in. And in California, you were not allowed to use lead ammunition. So the timeline again for different parts of the state is different. But if I remember correctly, I think I was 12. We started reloading. So I was 12 in, yeah, 2008. Yeah, just like you said. So I got a 243 and the price of copper ammunition was 2 to 3 times as much per box. So in one season, when my dad got his new 30-06, because they didn't make factory ammunition for the 35 Remington, we were able to, in 1.5 seasons, with a cheap Lee single stage press, replace all of our lead ammunition and actually end up saving and paying for that Lee press just with the money savings from the ammo we would have bought. So we got into reloading, and I'll say the brands that we've used in our household. Not gonna say the reports on all of them, but we started, the first one was Barnes TSX, and then my dad got the TTSX. I've also tried the Nosler E-tip and then the Hornady GMX, which they've now replaced with the CX. So I've tried those four, which is most of the big companies. And I'll say some things I like about copper ammunition is that it holds together much better than lead ammunition from what we've seen. Now, the lead ammunition we used was the Remington Core Lock. That was a pretty common one my dad used. That bullet on black bears especially fragmented quite a bit. And my dad noticed a lot of lost meat. as soon as we started using copper bullets, we found that we were having the bullets stay together better, which copper is a harder alloy than lead. So we were seeing the bullets staying together. But a downside is we were not seeing the blood trails that we would like to see. I'm red-green color deficient. If anybody wants to like test me on it, have me do a colorblind test. It's not a joke. I'm absolutely terrible at them. I cannot see blood very well. I need nice blood trails. For archery, I shoot expandables. I shoot heavier draw weight so I can shoot those expandables so I can have more blood on the ground. And that was one issue that I had with copper ammunition is um, let's see. I've not shot the TTSX out of my gun, but the 3 bullets that I've shot out of my gun, I've killed a couple deer and an elk with those bullets, and there was little to no blood for all those. The bullets either went right through, which is great, so 2 holes, or on the elk, 220 yards, heart shot, no blood. I just kept shooting till the elk was on the ground, and I pulled 3 or 4 bullets out of that elk, and there was little to no blood. We actually drugged the elk over the snow. It was like 3 of us, 500-pound bull, and just very little blood out of that cavity. So my issue with the coppers, other brands, was that I wasn't seeing the blood trails from the lead bullets that we were seeing. So one night, couldn't sleep, kid was up, put her to bed. I'm wide awake, started looking for new copper bullets, and that's how I found the McGuire Ballistics Copper Rose bullets. So kind of tried to tee you up there, Sam. So why don't you let us know what you guys offer?
Yeah, so I guess 2008 when that happened, when the lead ban went up, we were sitting around a campfire running hunters. We had a big group of hunters in, and I remember telling my partner sitting there, I was like, I'm gonna do this. And it was 2013. We ordered our first batch of material. I finally I talked to my father about investing in it and starting. That's what led us down the road of getting into it. So I tell guys, our bullets are not meat savers. Like we're not. In my opinion, damage equals death. I'm not here to make a bullet that saves meat. I'm here. I do not like tracking. I do not like tracking. I want fast recoveries, and that's what we set out to do. And through the years, I've seen every projectile you can think of come through. Guided. It's hard. I don't even know the numbers of animals we've guided, and all over the country as well. I guided for Rawhide Creek Outfitters in Wyoming, where you would stack up 40 to 35 to 45 days or so of guiding straight. And I don't even, you're talking, you would just see like there was just stuff dying every day, just as far as like you're guiding mule deer, elk, pronghorn. They have a 20-day season on the deer. And so a lot of stuff gets done in that 20 days. And so I just took note of what every projectile was doing, good and bad. And I kind of took that, started implementing that into my engineering process. And like, what do I want to see out of a projectile? And kind of the main thing is, yeah, it's, they're the number one thing is like when there's more damage, they die faster. It's just a fact. There is a point of diminishing return where you are just getting excessive with the amount of damage these projectiles are doing. And we've seen that with some of them. Like you create a, I don't know, 6-inch permanent wound channel through an animal. A 3-inch they'll die at the same rate, right? You're just creating that much hemorrhage and kinetic energy transfer and all that going through the animal. It's like it doesn't need. So there is a point of diminishing return, but where all that stuff matters is on the marginal shots. And that's where if something comes in that you don't catch, like wind or, I don't know, an elevation call, animal moves, that's where a bullet that does a lot more damage and is able to create more wound path with exit holes. That's very important for us too, as an exit hole. We want to see exits. Not that ours aren't the best. Ours aren't the best for, there's other bullets that do better jobs for blood trailing. But that being said, you almost always get an exit, and it does help. So, yeah, they just kind of coming at that angle, and and really trying to pick apart what I liked and what I didn't like. And it's across the board. It's not just copper. There was lead projectiles. I mean, we've got a lot of, you know, a lot of years doing this and just good case studies to kind of back up what we saw. And the point is, like, where we got to is like, once we got to the final stages of this projectile, I was talking to my partner, Colby Williams, and I'm like, when's the last time we tracked anything? Guide, right? And this is every week. I mean, we're guiding every weekend or running around the country, like hunting. And it's like, when's the last time we lost an animal? When's the last time we had to blood trail? It's almost non-absent, like, or it's almost absent at this point, or is like we can't put a finger on when the last time we had an animal get away. And so that goes into a few things. That's not just the projectile, but the accuracy of the rifles of the systems that we're running. But as far as like what the projectiles are able to do to these animals as well is just causing like it. I don't know, made my job easier. And I try to think about this coming from an angle of would I buy this projectile if I wasn't attached to it, trying to, and that's where we've got. Like I would try to make the ultimate Western style hunting projectile, not I've talked to dangerous game guys and I'm like, that's not what I'm doing. Varmint guys and all that. I'm trying to take projectiles and kill, big stuff on Western style hunts. So yeah, just took that angle. And 2013 is when we started playing with it. And it was 2022 when we got everything together and launched. So yeah, 9-year process on that and or so, and lots of interesting stuff along the way. So
Yeah, so what you said brings up a few questions for me. So one of them, and we'll dive into archery just for a moment here. So one thing a lot of people don't understand with archery is with archery equipment, hemorrhaging is what brings the animal down, right? It's not shock. So sharpness of the broadhead, you want to slice through very important life essential organs with the animal, right? Now, it sounds like you said that your bullets are designed more for hemorrhaging and less for shock. Am I understanding that correctly?
no.
Okay.
All of it's important. There's a weird energy, like shock and energy is kind of a weird thing. It's hard to put a finger on, but there is projectiles that have I call it a turn off switch. And it's like it just, you can put a melon sized hole through an animal and it will run 100 yards and fall over and die. I've seen that, and then on the other side, there's something that does happen with our projectiles where it hits something in the body and it falls over flat dead. And I've read some studies on it. I've got to track that stuff down, but it's like there's a kinetic energy shutoff switch that can happen. But on the other side is, yes, the hemorrhaging and what it does to the vital tissues. If you can put all the shock you want into it, but if those vital tissues are not damaged, then you're not going to they can actually recover from that. You can have animals fall over and get up and run off afterwards. The vital tissue damage is important for keeping the animal down. Once they hit the ground, it just goes into a bunch of different. There's a bunch of dynamics that are used to kill, and I think they're all important. And it's hard to put like, damaged tissue, that kinetic energy transfer stuff, like that stuff. I've just seen it too many times. I hear people talk about how it's not real. I've just seen animals get turned off from mid body rib shots enough to where something's happening, and it's
Yeah.
not every time, but yeah, there's a lot of things that happen to kill an animal, and so we've tried to make sure that our projectile covers all of those bases to the best, like across the spectrum, better than anything else I've ever seen. So
Yeah, definitely. And so one thing I want to add that you kind of glazed over and I want to highlight is When I was shopping for copper bullets, so one thing that I've also been disappointed with other copper bullets is the ballistic coefficient of the bullets. They are much lower than their lead counterparts. That's until I found these. And I don't know if it's just you, if there's other copper bullets that are kind of getting higher BCs now, but I shoot a 6.5 PRC. Not gonna say the brand, but another brand copper bullet has a BC of 438, something like that. Your BCs for the Copper Rose are 600. That is much greater. And it's actually only let's say 0.040 or 0.043 less than the Hornady ELDX bullets, which are supposed to be Hornady's second highest ballistic coefficient bullet, I think behind the match bullet. So, like you said, you have built a bullet that handles the shock, helps with hemorrhaging, and then for that longer range shots, we see that higher BC. So your bullets seems like they encompass pretty much everything with that copper material, which is kind of a challenge for other manufacturers. So good on you for that. One thing I do want to add real quick, and then we'll kind of move into the next thing, which is my load development, is you mentioned that your shots are other people's shots. For those of you listening that don't know, Sam, you're a good shot. And you
Well, I don't
don't give
know
yourself
about
enough credit, but I've seen some of the videos you put on YouTube, 700 yards. You're hitting, it looks like an 8x8 box filled with a water bladder. Like, you're probably a pretty good shot. I think you can call wind pretty well. So I don't want you to discount that. And I don't want everybody to discount that. Sam knows how to shoot a gun. And also, you know how to reload pretty well. I was messaging you on Instagram about my load development, and I don't think you checked the chart. I think you just pulled it out of your head of, oh, you're shooting this gun with this powder, try starting here and working up to here and see what works. Like, I think you're pretty well versed in shooting and reloading.
well, our I'll go over kind of how we function test our bullets a little bit first,
Sweet.
how,
Yeah.
and how we start our BC testing because the BCs are brought up, and I don't get any. They're not. I'll be perfectly transparent. They are not validated by any uh, lab radar or lab readings or whatever. So kind of, I'll go into how we kind of do some of that stuff. The bullets, when they come off, when we let's say we're prototyping or we are lot testing bullets or whatever. I test everything down to 2,000 feet per second based on the BC that we give. Okay.
Mhm.
As we go into the BCs have not been, so I will start with I'll start with an existing bullet that has a good drag curve, um, has a good reliable drag curve. So this 22 stuff we're messing with right now, 224, it's a 71 grain bullet. And the thing that people don't understand is weight does not determine aerodynamics. Shape is a massive factor in that. Density helps, but if a bullet is built more efficiently, it will be more efficient. And a 5 or 10% deficiency rate of weight does not make up for uh, a 50% increase in efficiency of aerodynamic shape. So that's kind of how we're getting to that point. I don't care about standards. I care about performance number one. So when we go to build, I get myself into some troubles here because I'll make a big crazy bullet, and all of a sudden it's like, well, it doesn't fit into magazines, and it doesn't, like the SAMI standards don't matter. I don't care. I'm not here to copy what other people are doing. I'm here to make a bullet that's going to outperform everything else. So I've certain ones are built for, it's like the 125 you're talking about. I don't I think it's roughly 50 thousandths longer than the 147 ELDM. It's a very long bullet, and it
Thank you.
barely fits into the magazines. So I think it's at 3.040 on a magazine length on a SAMI for a 6.5 PRC. You back that up with a healthy jump, 2.960 is where I like to run that stuff, and it gives you 80 thousandths of jump and good magazine feed and all that. I can't make a bigger bullet I can't make a bullet that's gonna beat that bullet in short action applications. That 125 running in a 6.5 PRC is commonly run between in 22 to 24 inch barrels. 32 to 3,300 feet per second. That's kind of what, and that's when I'm looking at building a projectile, I'm thinking about where, what is the rocket ship that this thing's going to be launched off of, right? And for Western hunting and stuff like that, it's like, okay, the 6.5 PRC, I'm thinking of a lot of faster magnums is what I would use, which, so basically that bullet's built for 6.5 Creedmoors up to the 6.5 PRC. So going back to the testing, when we are prototyping a bullet, we go, I like the 71 grain, and it's 1.250, so it's a very long bullet. As efficiently built as I can get away with in a 7 twist. So a 1 in 7 is where I'm aiming for when I make that. There's our standard to take it into the field is a 7x7 box of water to test function, and behind it is a bigger box, 10x10 or whatever, to catch the bullet and stop it. What we want to see is full deployment into the first 7x7, and the second one is to catch it. And we bring those bullets down to or under 2,000 feet per second. Some of this stuff is very hard to do. If you take, like when I was in the 168 7mm testing, we're at I believe 1,040 yards to get that bullet into the 2,000 foot round. It's a long ways. And so, and I want to test these things in field conditions, falling into the target, not on reduced loads. I want to add all the other pressures that come into a bullet falling into a target at these ranges. I don't want to just do a reduced load, shoot it into a bag of water, point blank, and say, here we go. It also helps with the BC testing and all that when you're walking it through. So once we get, so the 22, I'll just go into that. I ran an 89 grain burger. We got a good zero on it. We ran 4, 6, 7, 800 yards. That BC held up very well for it. Doesn't mean that is what it is. But that's where a good starting point for us for fine tuning. And then I did my impact test at 700 yards, which brought it right to 2,000 feet per second based on that BC. And we got full deployment in that 7x7 with that 22 cal. And then we're able to kind of send it out to testers and other hunters and stuff like that and get them the bullet safety tested. And we're able to start seeing what that thing's going to do in the field and all that. Now, when they go out to the other guys, we've got, I don't know, this 224 will go out to half a dozen different shooters, all customers. It's all I use, guys that are stood by us while we've been going through this. People that support us, we try to support back, and we tell guys we want, like, there is no reason, do not send us bad numbers. We don't want to support, like, we inflating our numbers does nothing for us. So, and that's been a common factor, is the people that these BCs are averaged, and the people that actually shoot our bullets, we get almost no feedback from, or very little. And the variance of feedback, if it is, it's high and low. I've got one customer with like the 195 30 cal, and it's twist rate dependent and all this other stuff. So BCs are non-stable and they change throughout different platforms, and everybody that shoots long range should true their BCs. Anybody I hear talk about BCs on a consistent rate doesn't know what they're talking about. Larry at G7 Precision, who's one of the best hand loaders and rifle builders I've ever met, trues every single rifle, and he's had 2 rifles, twin rifles, scopes with factory 180 grain ELD M stuff in 7 PRCs, and those guns both trued completely differently. So that's what I tell guys. This is an average to true your stuff, and the numbers we give will get you right there, if not exactly on. We will be sending them out for lab verification and all that in the future, but going forward, it's like, yeah, it's just one more step that we got to do. And anyways, so that's kind of how we get the testing going and rolling on that stuff. And then just constantly my guide gun and my guide's guns get loaded up with this stuff, and we roll out and we start hunting with it, and we want to see every angle of it, the good and the bad. And that's how we'll kind of That's how we go through our R&D process on these things. It's in the field, and that's kind of the cool thing that I have going for me is I'm able to go from a developer into the field and see exactly what they're doing terminally in every condition you can think of. So um, I'm not. I think that's a pretty unique position, and I think that's really been a really cool, good attribute for us evolving this bullet into something special. Um, because there's no disconnect from somebody that developed it to the person that's actually seeing what it's doing.
Yeah, definitely. So a couple things I want to touch on really quick, and then we'll move into my experience with load development. So one thing is for those of you that are thinking, why is this bullet so long? Copper is a less dense material than lead. So in order for it to be the same weight as lead for a same caliber bullet, the caliber means the diameter has to stay the same. So the way to get more weight is you make it longer. Another thing that Sam mentioned that, Sam, I know you know this, but for those of you that don't know it, is anytime an object is going through a fluid, air, water, what happens is it displaces fluid and it replaces the fluid. So you see something that's really, we'll call it aerodynamic. It's something that has little displacement and then that replacement is very quick and smooth. So think of like a torpedo, something that's kind of longer and skinnier. The water is going to, for those of you watching on YouTube, the water is going to move around one side of it and replace back really easily. If we have a tugboat, so the water is going to come back and then we're going to see that kind of backfill of the water, and that's where we get that less consistent and then that less aerodynamic movement. So, Sam, I know you know it, so don't take
Yeah,
offense to that. But for those that don't know, that's kind of what Sam's talking about there. And longer projectiles that have a more smooth transition to that point are going to be more aerodynamic. So I just want to touch on that. So now I want to go into my load development. And if I remember correctly, again, feel free to correct me, Sam. So I got the Copper Rose hollow points. For those of you on YouTube, I'm going to try to show you here. This hollow point to me looks like it's going to open up right away. And that's something that's pretty exciting for someone that has issues seeing red and green. This Copper Rose, I call this the Copper Rose OG, Sam. So
yeah, yeah.
sorry about that, but I kind of call it the OG and then the Copper Rose hollow point. This bullet, this is going to be, again, that's going to be, for those of you watching, it's going to be slightly more aerodynamic given that that tip is going to more
That's
smoothly displace that.
dynamic. Yeah, the
What's that?
Hall Point does not have a high BC. The Hall Point BC is like 0.350 G1. It's not
Yeah.
very high. It's for
Yeah.
guys that are not shooting, trying to make it more price friendly to people that are not shooting long range. If you're shooting under 300 yards, I tell guys to shoot the Hall Point. There's or whatever. If you're not dialing to range, the Hall Point is a great option. It's
Oh,
cheaper. Terminally, it's great. Doesn't have anywhere near the BC, but that BC only matters at a certain like once you get past a certain range. If
yeah.
you are just shooting animals, if you are just aiming and pulling the trigger and holding on hair and never dialing up, I tell guys just shoot the Hall Points. They are a fantastic bullet. They are based on the same profile as the Copper Rose. So I've had really good luck loading them into the same load and shooting the same point of impact. So you can kind of like mess around with what you need for your application. I talk to guys back east that are shooting whitetail and they never shoot over 150 yards. There's no reason to shoot the tipped Copper Rose. It's just use the Hall Point and it will do everything you need to do. There's a slight difference in terminal ability that I won't go a bunch into, but there is a little bit of terminal ability difference between the two. But they do both do really well at yeah um, killing animals really fast. So I've had guys I've kind of that's kind of an angle to the market I've gone after is like not everybody needs a 1,000 yard bullet. So
Yeah, I'm glad you interjected with that because I was gonna tee you up for that, but you went ahead and took it away. So appreciate you jumping in there. Yeah, so what I did is I found a load that I liked with the we'll call it the tipped Copper Rose, the Copper Rose OG, and then I reloaded just a 20 box, half of them the Copper Rose hollow point, and then half of them the Copper Rose tipped, and that's what I'm gonna use for hunting. One thing that you told me to do, and I'm gonna make a short video testing this, is you told me, like you just mentioned, do the same load for both. You should shoot them and see very, very similar results. So I'll do a video on that in the future here. But I want to talk about this target. For those of you watching on YouTube, you get to see it. For those of you listening, I'll just describe it. So what I did is I went ahead and found from research online that the Hornady Precision Hunter 6.5 PRC ammunition, the gun that I got really likes that round. So I went ahead, bought a box, tested it, and it did like that round. So what I did, and this is because I don't have anything more than a single stage press, a couple dies, some powder, and a digital scale. I don't have anything more than that. So what I did is I actually set my seating die down to the length of that Hornady Precision Hunter bullet, and that was just the length of the bullet that I ran. From there, I then developed loads 52 up to 56 every half grain. So 52, 52 and a half, 53 up to 56. Um, Now I will say the first group that I shot, I was at a rifle range. There were 30 something benches, 30 something shooters. The guy next to me was shooting a 45 3 feet away from me. His brass was hitting me in the head as I was trying to shoot. I didn't shoot my best group. I got a 0.86-inch group, and I thought it probably was me a little bit. So I shot another one at 53. Now, the reason I jumped up from 52 to 53 is Sam, you had mentioned to me these bullets like to go fast. So instead of shooting 4 rounds at 52 and a half, my thought was these bullets are a little pricey for me. I'm a PhD student. I don't have a ton of money. So my thought was I'll just pull those bullets later and reload them at the grain weight that the gun likes. So jumped up to 53, saw a really similar group size, 0.89. So I thought, okay, I'll just jump up another full grain. Jumped up to 54, and this group tightened up pretty quick. So I got a 0.58-inch group. Those of you on YouTube to see, that's my group right there, 0.58 inches.
Buddy.
Super happy with that. Laid down about 90 yards. I was shooting in the national forest through some trees. I was laying down on a rock. That's one of the best groups I've ever shot. So then my thought was, okay, let's see if it can get better. So I went ahead and jumped up to 55 and I got a 0.79-inch group. So not quite as good. Jumped back down to 54 and a half just for kicks and got a 0.67-inch group. Now, for everybody listening, if you're hunting and you're really under, like you were saying, Sam, under like 300 yards, is 1/10 of an inch going to make a big difference? Probably not. Um, if you're like me though, and you're planning on building this gun, I'm trying to build this gun out to 600 yards. I've got some hunts in Wyoming that I'm building points for where I might have some longer shots, longer follow-up shots. I want this gun to hit exactly where I'm aiming at 600 yards. I went ahead with this lighter load. Unfortunately, the chronograph I was using decided to quit working on me, so I don't have any velocities. But an extra half grain of powder might give you some better velocity for some more kinetic energy downrange. But for me, I was seeing really consistent tenth of an inch group sizes between half a grain and 1 grain of powder. I've never seen that small increments with bullets. I've never seen that consistency. I've loaded again Barnes TSX, Barnes TTSX with my dad, Nosler E-tip, and Hornady CMX. I've never seen such finite changes with the bullets, and I probably could have got another, I don't know, 500th smaller if I went, 1/10 of a grain, 2/10 of a grain, things like that. But for me, for someone that doesn't reload, getting 0.58 inches at 90 yards, that's almost half MOA, right? I don't know that I can do any better than that, especially for someone that's just throwing it together, self-taught reloader. So for me, in my experience, I had a really pleasant time reloading these bullets. Once I found the load, I pulled the bullets, loaded up a box of 10 Copper Rose, you call them tipped, and then 10 Copper Rose hollow points, and I'm ready to go hunting. Load development was super, super easy with this round. Um, I just have never had that experience. It took me took me 12 shots to get my load development that I was extremely satisfied with. So I don't know if I'm just like a really good reloader now all of a sudden, but I just think that there's a lot of consistency with these bullets. And I'll let you jump in a sec here, Sam. I see you got something to say. One thing that I did know, and I did a review video on this on YouTube, so go ahead and check that one out, is I weighed all 50 bullets of the hollow points and all 50 bullets of those tipped. Every hollow point bullet was the exact same. My scale goes up by 2/10 of a grain. Every bullet was the exact same for the hollow points. And then for the tipped bullets, I think the low was 4/10 lower than the high. So those bullets are super, super precise, and that's something that people do with arrows. So just really consistent bullets. I had the easiest time reloading these. Honestly, it was a little easier than reloading the Hornady ELDXs, which are supposed to be, some really, really top-notch bullets. So maybe it's the gun, maybe it's the caliber. I don't know that I'm much better of a
Good.
shooter than I was years ago, but I had a really positive experience with these bullets. So you want to talk about that, Sam, a little bit?
Well, development's easy with them. I tell guys don't overthink it. It's almost always a powder issue, and my loading process is prep the brass. I like to neck trim, chamfer ID OD, and then internally expand with like a Sinclair neck expander to 1 to 2 thousandths under. Everything gets done. Everything gets expanded. So a nice case, like a nice case prep to start. Make sure not to expand them way before because you can have spring back. And then I start. Some of the guns are just like I've shot them enough to know like it's just going to be a really simple process. When I start with, we'll go with something new. If I don't know it, I will often go to another copper bullet manufacturer that I know increase like has a higher pressure rate than our bullets, and I'll start somewhere in the medium to low on their end, and I'll start working my way up. And I find a seating depth. If I have magazine length, I run them 0.020 off, and then I go up 0.5 grains. I load where I shoot, so I have this to my advantage. But I go 2 shots, and if the 2 bullets are not basically in the same hole and or under, let's just say a half minute with a very low ES to start, I don't even waste my time with putting a third bullet in there. I just don't. I don't see the point. If you shoot 2 shots and they're 2 inches apart with a 50 foot per second ES, I can't understand for the life of me why you'd put a third, fourth, fifth round in there. So 2 shots, run it up, and it's half grain jumps all the way up. And there's a lot of combinations that shoot really well all the way through development, but I'm shooting them for a certain velocity range. I don't shoot a 6.5 PRC to shoot at the same speed that a 6.5 Creedmoor shoots. So I'm going to expect a certain velocity out of it. And if it doesn't do that, I'm going to change powders I'm going to see. But we could take like 4831 shortcut, which is probably my favorite short action Magnum powder. And I'll just say personally what we've had on ours. And I think we started, don't quote me, but let's say 55 grains, ran it up. It's 58.5 grains, shooting at 32.25 on a 24-inch gun. And I will go up until my rule of thumb is put powder in it, half grain jumps. If it and carefully watch pressure and be safe. I'm not telling anybody to run hot loads or anything like that. But what I am saying is like if you're running, a 6.5 PRC with our 125 at 2,900 or 3,000, it's probably got a lot more steam left in it. And so, which is guys can do whatever they want, but for me personally, I want to run that a little bit faster. So the rule of thumb is half grain jumps up. If it doesn't get accurate before you see any pressure signs and or case fill, make an adjustment on powder accordingly. If you run out of case fill, go to a faster burning powder. If you hit pressure, go to a slower burning powder. And that will almost always fix it. I like to find a powder that you find that's just wide open, multiple grains into the same point of impact, shooting really good. Like I've had load development where you're 3 grains shooting into the same 0.5. And you're like, this is just going to be easy. I don't really want a powder that's going to be like, oh, it has to be a 0.5 here where it shoots good. If it's that finicky, I'll just go to a different powder and see. But generally speaking, a lot of guys we have, which has been really cool, are young dudes that are just getting into it, that they actually have more success loading our bullets than some of the old guys that have been doing it forever that have a bunch of already have, they're kind of entrenched in their ideas of how to load. And
Yeah, they
so
have their protocol that they like to do.
like guys like you that just like kind of just run them up and they end up sending me like ragged hole, one hole ragged hole groups, and they're happy. Where I've seen other guys that sit around, um, messing with things that I know don't help, but they just feel like this is how they've done it in the past with a different bullet, and so pretty simple. Yeah, just and then I like to run them at range. I don't sit there and shoot. Once I get a gun done at 100 yards, it doesn't come back to 100 unless I'm checking zeros or doing that. I go to range and I run it, that's where it's really going to be tested. So, and I won't shoot I don't necessarily shoot big strings and stuff like that. I might shoot 1, 2, 3 shots at a range, and then sometimes it's just one. It's like 4, 8, 6, 7,000, and I'm bouncing it around. I want to make sure the gun's at least baseline and shooting good. I want to make sure the gun's also doing what it's supposed to do, not picking up a tracking issue or a loose scope or something else. Like I'm trying to make sure that that gun's doing what it's supposed to do. And big overbore magnums or just hunting rifles in general, um, shooting a fifth or sixth round into a group, in my opinion, we have a thermal dynamics, which is basically heat transfer into material. We deal with that every day, and I know the difference between adding stresses to material through temperature, and it's just going to change it. So for me personally, I want to know that a gun cold is going to put the bullet where I want it. That's kind of my thing. So yep, pretty simple. Run it up, put powder in it until it shoots good, and or you get the pressure or case fill, make your adjustment accordingly.
Yeah, definitely appreciate you making it simple like that. Again, you know reloading better than I do. So anybody listening, that's like a basic framework that you can use. And I followed it pretty closely. I don't have the micrometer to measure, magazine length, things like that. But honestly, if you're intimidated about reloading, look into it a little bit, but it's definitely something that you can have a lot of fun doing.
It's a lot of fun. It's not that hard. It's really
Yes,
safe as long as you keep your stuff organized. Don't put the wrong powders in. Don't do, make sure you're looking at like, uh, following the instructions and reading pressure and stuff like that. Guns don't tend to just blow up if you're at a safe point with it and you're working up safely and paying attention and not, messing with a bunch of stuff while you're reloading. It's a lot of fun. And I used to hate it. I used to be like, the only reason I do this is just to have my gun so I go hunt with it. And I've really started to enjoy it. It's like a puzzle to me now. I kind of watch the pressures and the velocities, and I'm like trying to judge like where can we go from it with here or there, especially sometimes a little bit more. Every once in a while, you do get a finicky gun, and it's just kind of fun trying to figure it out.
yeah, definitely. Well, the last question I ask all my guests, because this is the Kinesio Outdoors podcast, I study kinesiology, exercise science. I was going to ask you about exercise, but sounds like with guiding every weekend, you don't really do much training. Can I assume that's right? Your training is guiding, walking up and down the hills with a pack of water and
No,
keeping up with dogs and your
I
clients?
yeah, there's that. I mean, I train pretty hard. I mean, not that I'm some fitness expert or whatever, and it's been kind of a tough season being sick and all that, but there's no replacement for putting a big heavy pack on going on hikes. And even with my guiding, like there's efficiency things you can do to be a little bit lazier. And if you put 80 to 100 pounds on your back and you have to walk up a mountain, there's no cheating it. So if
Yeah,
I'm getting ready for mountain hunting and stuff like that, yeah, the um, hike, I can't tell guys that hike with your gear that you're going to use. Um,
definitely.
but just getting out, yeah, flexibility is another big thing. I tell guys like, man, it's just as I get older, it's like and get more beat up. It's like that's something I really need to work on in the future. But hiking, strength training, all that other stuff, like making sure you're able to actually do some of this stuff. An elk quarter can weigh 125 pounds, and you have to be able to manage that stuff if you're out there if you're out there hunting. So,
Um,
I take guys hunting all the time, and it is incredible to me. We'll go on a little hike and I'll look around at the guy and I'm like, this guy hasn't exercised since high school, and you just see utter terror on their face. Like they all of a sudden they're just like in shock over how out of shape they've gotten. So yeah, very healthy mind, healthy body, healthy mind, right?
Definitely. Well, that's all the questions I have. So the last thing I'll have you do, Sam, is just let everybody know where they can find you on Instagram, and then I'll wrap us up here.
Yep, awesome. So SMC Guide Service is my guide service page. Williams Guide Service is my partner's page. And then that's Williams SMC LLC on .com. That's where you can find our guide service stuff. McGuireBallistics.com for any of the bullet stuff. McGuire.ballistics on Instagram and YouTube. I got a small YouTube or whatever. I think it's just Google McGuire Ballistics and you'll find that there. That's about it, man.
Yeah, well, perfect. That's plenty of ways to reach you. So I want to thank you again, Sam, for joining me on the podcast. It was great talking with you. Nice to hear more about the way you develop these bullets. I like to geek out on things, and you definitely were speaking my language today. So I appreciate the conversation, and I appreciate you all for listening. So with that, everybody, get out there, get outside, maybe try reloading, and we'll catch you on the next podcast. Thanks for listening.